Well, you can like him or not, but he was exactly correct after the game. Dabo Sweeney had much to say about Georgia and so forth. But this is the most important thing I think that he said. This is the last comment from him after the game. Actually, it was the final part of his press conference. He said they didn't hand out the national championship trophy tonight. He went on to say some other stuff, but I think that's really important for Georgia themselves to hear and listen to. I mean, we've seen big games before at the beginning of seasons. Now, for Georgia specifically, lately, three of the last four have come in three of the last four seasons. You had Clemson twice in that 4 year period, and then you had Oregon right in the middle. We don't know yet if this means that Georgia won the national championship. Their betting odds got a little bit better after this weekend, but Georgia's played big games to start the season in the past too. The North Carolina game was a huge game at the time. That was no one thought they'd win the national championship, but and then a year later in week two against Notre Dame up there, that really kick-started Kirby and company. That win against Notre Dame in South Bend. They didn't hand a national championship trophy out that night either. But Georgia was definitely on the way at that point. We didn't know it for sure. I think for me in 2017, I've told this story before about when I realized Georgia was really, really good that year was when Notre Dame was absolutely woodshedding USC, and it was the week off. Georgia had already beaten Mississippi State and so forth, but I realized that weekend I was in Columbia, South Carolina, and Georgia had already beaten Mississippi State, Notre Dame, etc. And it was just so clear that they were just down. They were rolling through everybody at that point. But it was when Notre Dame was killing SC that I was like, wow, this is nuts. I've told these stories a couple times. I'll do it now with 21 when I knew for sure. It was at Vanderbilt. JT Daniels and company, they had scored 35 points in the first quarter. And people, you can say what you want to about Vanderbilt, whatever. When you're scoring 35 points in a quarter, that was insane. And then I know they had more points than Vandy had yards. They almost had more points in the first quarter than Vanderbilt had yards the whole day. But and then in 22, it was an Oregon game. I mean, and I think the Clemson game this season is like Diet Oregon, I guess. I mean, it wasn't the second half. If Georgia had played the first half like the second, people would be going nuts right now for them. The betting would be out of control. There'd be all sorts of stuff, handing them the trophy kind of. That's not what happened. And Dabo's right. They didn't hand out a national championship trophy tonight. And he goes on to say this. He said, "We didn't lose the ACC tonight. We got our butts kicked in one game. We got a long way to go. Let's play it out and see what happens." They're probably the second best team in the ACC behind Miami. I don't think there's reason to overreact with Clemson if you're a Clemson person, but I will say they're not beating Georgia. They play anytime soon. We'll see how the season progresses, but they are not. They should not be penciling themselves in for an appearance in Atlanta again this season, unless it's maybe in the Peach Bowl, which is a possibility for an ACC championship team if the Orange Bowl. Yeah, it's possible. So we'll just see. I mean, I think the last thing that Clemson would want would be to play Georgia in the Dome again. That would be not ideal, but I think it's important to keep perspective. This 1 week, that's it. It's not more or less than that. And I don't know how practice was today. We don't get to see practice during the season. We haven't for years for whatever reason. And but whatever happened at practice today was important because if you are continuing to practice Monday after a big win before you're playing Tennessee Tech and from Cooksville, Tennessee, then you're on your way. But it's hard when you're running a marathon and the first stretch of it is kind of a 800 meter or something like that, and you win it in a decisive way. It's hard not to think about that a lot. I mean, Georgia just released highlights, behind the scenes highlights today or tonight, a few minutes ago of the game. And, Kirby was talking about how they're going to kick the door in and all this stuff. It is hard to turn that off. That's what Monday practices are for. That is how you win national championships, is continuing to move forward. And if you are not doing that, for instance, what's USC's practice going to be like on Tuesday? The Trojans, you have to be consistent no matter what you're doing. You have to be consistent. It's the only way to get where you need to go in athletics. But I think the best part about Dabo after the game was he wasn't like sugarcoating anything. Like sometimes in the past, I'm gonna tell this story now. It's not a great story or anything like that, but I remember after the Orange Bowl, Kay Klubnik and Dabo were asked. I wonder who asked them the question. I'm actually gonna look it up real quick and not hold y'all. And the question after the game was asking Dabo and Klubnik and Will Shipley if Clemson had fallen from the elite. And every single person on stage, including KJ Henry, laughed at that question. And the fact of the matter was, they had, and they have. And, that I guess hubris is the best way to put it. That's what you want to avoid. Like, when Georgia lost to Alabama last year, it would be completely legitimate post Alabama game of the SEC championship to ask Kirby Smart, why can't you consistently beat Nick Saban? You've beaten him one time. For the record, those post game press conferences at SEC championships can be a little bit nuts for people like me who are photographers. I can't go in there and always ask those questions. The reporter should be asking these questions though. And so when someone asks that, the sort of the laughing it off is the part to me that is troubling, because from that point forward, till today, Clemson's 9-5, and there's a lot of, well, actually from that moment, they just lost that game. They're 9-6 from that night till today, if my math is right. So that's not great. That's certainly not elite, and it's not funny at all. And you wanna stay away from that all you can. But that right there, to me, that night, I'm like, these guys don't understand the predicament they're in, the situation they're in. I think that's the sort of stuff that we didn't see from Dabo in Atlanta on Saturday afternoon. About said Saturday night. He just I wonder how many times he said butts or tails or whatever. It looks like 10 times. It's 10 times. There was nothing he said, we got our butts kicked. We got your butt kicked. He said, I thought he competed his butt off. That one doesn't count. So 9. And then he got his butt kicked. It just was constant. There was no backing away from this, just a flat out butt kicking. They kicked our butt tonight. When you get your bit cut, I mean, it was just like, y'all don't need to read all of them to you, but that was way better than what I've seen in the past. Like the Orange Bowl thing was a pretty bad situation in my mind. That was not the way that should be. They had gotten beat, and they had lost to Clemson, Carolina by a point. That was a tough loss for Clemson, and that knocked them out of the playoff. They would have played Georgia probably. I'd have to go back and look. They'd have gotten manhandled by Georgia in 22, but they missed that opportunity. And then a season ago, going 9-4. These seasons are long, and you have to keep focused with where you're at, where you're going, where you've been is irrelevant. And the consistency is what matters the most. And if you're Georgia looking at the rest of this season, it was a good win over Clemson. It wasn't a great win. It was a good win. It's not a top 10 team. It wasn't a tight game like Ohio State or Missouri or something like that. When Clemson kicked the field goal, whether anybody realized it for sure, that game was over. That was a 10-point win at that point for Georgia minimum. It turned out to be a 31-point win. They had 3 touchdowns. So, it's going to be tough to beat these guys, but it will be less difficult to beat them if they don't concentrate on what's important. And with that psychopath head coach that they've got, I don't think that's going to be a problem. All you have to do, if you've never heard them before, or listen to Kirby's edited, not the cuss word ones, which for the record don't bother me at all, but listen to the edited versions of his speeches. And for the record, you don't win by doing speeches. Like, that's great. That is a really important thing in that moment. But if you don't do the work to lead to that moment, you're not winning anyway. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the newsletter.